Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to all panelists to be here with me on time. So this is the third day of GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Summit, and welcome. I see that you just started joining us online, and those of you who are familiar with the CCESS and have been following our webinars and in-person events for perhaps several years, you know that it has really become a tradition to have an online day where we keep connection with our national and international audience. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you today after 2 years of the CCESS on campus. And of course, welcome back to our Michigan audience. I hope you all enjoyed really amazing presentations and workshops on the first day of the conference, when we have learned so much from our keynote speakers and all other presenters. And of course, yesterday, another fabulous day with great presentations and other field trip on the research vessel from Muskegon. So those of you who are joining us from far away and could not join those 2 first days events of the CCESS, we do have a recording for you. It's a professional recording made by Tamavongsa Studio, who have been working with the CCESS since its inception, since 2019. That recording is going to be available on our YouTube channel and on the CCESS website, but you wouldn't see it today. Unfortunately, we are still editing this recording, so you probably will see it in a couple of days. And then the session today is going to be entirely recorded. And I wanted to remind that we do have 2 webinars today. I'm going to start with the International Youth Forum, and you see almost all participants already joining online. And then I want to remind that at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we have the second webinar with Professor Peter Allen Victor, who is joining us from York University. And of course, he's a very accomplished author who have written several books on environmental economics. And he will talk today about his latest book on escape from overshoot. So if you are transiting from this webinar to our 11 a.m. webinar, make sure that you are following the links in the program. They are posted on the CCESS website. It's going to be a different URL, so make sure that you follow the program. If you are registered for this event, you have also received the link in your email. So for those of you who if we haven't met yet, my name is Elena Lioubimtseva. I teach at Grand Valley State University. I'm a professor of geography, and I'm also one of the founders of GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Summit. And welcome to the third day of our 6th summit. I'm also super excited to share that this event is a part of the Global Climate Change Week, and Grand Valley is preparing to take the lead. So watch for the big announcement that's going to come. We're very grateful to our leaders from the University of Tasmania, who have been hosting the Global Climate Change Week for the past 5 years. And the rumors are that Grand Valley is going to be the next capital of the Climate Change Week starting next year. With no further delays, I want to invite our speakers. So we have 3 presentations in this webinar, and we are going to start by the presentation by Rebecca Lubbers and Rylie Dietz. They're both students at Grand Valley State University, and I had a really great pleasure working with them over the past couple of years. So Rebecca is an alumni of Grand Rapids Community College, and she is currently an undergraduate student at GVSU. She is majoring in geography and sustainable planning. She's also minoring in environmental and sustainability studies. She's working on her certificate in sustainable food systems, geographic information systems technology, and urban and regional planning. She has so many different experiences. So she's so accomplished. She worked as a student resource coordinator at Grand Rapids Community College. She is also currently a president of the Association of Student Geographers and Planners at GVSU. And she previously led the Geography Club at GRCC, as well as the Gardening Club. And she is also a research assistant at the GLISA-ELF project. And I wouldn't talk much about this project because Rylie and Rebecca will talk about this in a minute. Rylie Dietz is the third year environmental studies major at Grand Valley as well. And she's also majoring in human resources in the College of Business, Sidman College of Business, as well as Frederick Marr Honors College at Grand Valley. She's a mentor. She is mentoring in both Honors College and Sidman College of Business. She's also a substitute teacher, and she has been giving lessons in many schools in West Michigan. Just as Rebecca, she is working on her certificate in geographic information systems. And she is also, both of them are very passionate about climate change education. And without any further delays, I would like to pass the screen to Rylie and Rebecca, and please welcome me in joining them. So.
All right, let me get my screen shared.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction.
Awesome. So like Elena was saying, Rebecca and I are both the research assistants for the GLISA-ELF project, also known as Elevating Youth Leadership and Peer Learning to Support Climate Adaptation in West Michigan Lakeshore Frontline Communities. And within this project, we have GLISA, we also have WMEAC, so the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, Muskegon Community College, and of course, us, Grand Valley State University. So what is GLISA? GLISA stands for the Great Lakes Integrated Sciences and Assessments. GLISA is one of 12 climate adaptation partnership teams that focuses on helping the nation prepare for and adapt to climate variability and change. GLISA works at the boundary between climate science and decision makers, striving to enhance Great Lakes communities' capacity to understand for, plan for, and respond to climate impacts now and in the future. For the past 10 years, GLISA has played a crucial role in co-producing usable climate information with a diverse array of partners and sectors while advancing fundamental physical and social sciences in support of climate adaptation science. So these are just some of the partnerships that GLISA has sustained with scholars, practitioners across the region at other universities, federal agencies, state and local and tribal governance, NGOs, professional associations, and businesses. So of course, with Grand Valley, we are part of the universities.
Yeah, so we are a 2-year project that started out this past spring. So we are funded through the University of Michigan. And so we are focusing on youth leadership and peer learning to support climate adaptation in West Michigan Lakeshore Frontline communities. Specifically, we will be talking a bit more about Muskegon as both the city and the county. And working with the high schools there, the Muskegon Community College, and kind of helping students learn more about climate adaptation and what their roles are in it. So our project has the focus of climate change in the West Michigan region, and here's why. So below is the most recent GLISA summary data outlining changes from 1951 to 2017 for this Great Lakes region. So we're looking at the average temperature increase, frost-free seasons are increasing, the total precipitation and heavy precipitation events. We really want to draw your attention to the total precipitation and then the heavy precipitation events as well, as we've seen a 14% and a 35% increase respectively. So we can also see those effects here in Michigan as a whole. So if you're not familiar with the Michigan region, where we are, if you're looking at my hand right here, us Michiganders like to use our hand as like a map. We're located right here along the shoreline. So this map shows kind of the projected change of our climate and how it is migrating over the next century. So gray, where you can see Michigan, is our baseline of where we've started and about where we should be. And by the end of the century, you're looking at the predictions on what our climate could look like. At the worst case scenario, we're going to start looking closer to a Texas climate. So on the left, we observe the total annual precipitation falling in the heaviest 1% of events from 1901 to 2016. So this is exact for the whole Midwest region. We're not talking just the surrounding Great Lakes. So this is a little bit broader with the highest percent chance at 42. This is kind of why we're focusing on some of that precipitation and the heavy rain events. We have a risk of the convective weathers, talking severe winds, lightning, tornadoes, and hail increasing, and then severe winter weather as well. Our Michigan winters, we have a lot of snowfall already, but we're looking at more sleet, ice storms, and snowstorms as well. So kind of looking at what that looks like today, we're already seeing some of those heavy weather events. So Whitehall is a city within Muskegon County. They have an average population of 3,000 individuals. And recently on June of 2024, they have about $500,000 worth of damage from a severe storm that you can see pictures here that were provided from Tanya Kabala of Wimiak. So this was just one of 3 severe weather events that has happened in the region within the last year. There's been another one about 3 weeks ago now, another severe storm that has hit them and has done more damage since, as well as last winter, there was a heavy winter storm. So this is kind of some of the risks that our future generations are facing right here in the area.
So when we're looking at Muskegon data, specifically climate and how our climate has impacted Muskegon, since that really is the primary focus, but not limited to, of our project, we have specific tools that the state climatologist, as well as GLISA, has kind of collaborated with to produce. And one of them is the Great Lakes climatology. So here we have climate stations. We have Great Lakes and divisions where users can actually hover their mouse over and click on each of these divisions in order to see climate information. So the data that you're seeing on the left-hand side of the picture of the map is data from the West Central Lower Michigan Station, which is in Muskegon. So it's just right locally here. And within that data, we have things like average temperature, average low temperature, high temperature, total precipitation, and other measurements that kind of gauge how the climate has been there through the duration of the years. And like I said, users can just go in there and find that information. Sorry, I clicked a button. There we go. Awesome. And when we think about Muskegon and how the climate has impacted there, since that is the focus of our project, we often think about youth vulnerability, right? And the impacts of which climate change is felt based on different types of population groups. So we have vulnerability of different population groups, including infants, elderly, pregnant women, people with disabilities, homeless and displaced, people with chronic health conditions, and people facing discrimination and are marginalized. So those aren't necessarily a ranking of who's more vulnerable, but more so the most vulnerable groups of the population. And how we calculate that is actually based on the left-hand picture at the bottom. So we have indicators of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacities to help kind of gauge a sense of who's going to feel those impacts mostly because of those reasons. And again, once again, GLISA also has another tool called the Climate and Hazard Mitigation Planning Tool, also known as CHAMPS. So here we can actually cross-list different types of themes, hazards, and impacts to kind of get some information from there. So users with the same kind of process can hover their mouse over the map to get that information. So here we have Muskegon County once again. So Muskegon County, Michigan has experienced 8,010,000 of reported property damage between 1996 and 2024.
Thank you. So yeah, we have a lot of tools at our disposal to kind of help analyze the impacts that are already being seen and what could be coming. And as we shared, that one of those most vulnerable groups is going to be our youth. Despite that, studies have showed that only 62% of Americans understand that climate change is anthropogenic in nature. And only 3/4 of teachers who are supportive of climate change teaching about it and the impacts on the environment, the economy, and the society. But out of the 3/4 of teachers that believe that, only 42% of our instructors teach about climate change within the curriculum. 3 and 4 science teachers specifically do teach about climate change, but only spend 1 to 2 hours discussing climate change. And then 84% of parents, regardless of how you're voting, agree that children should be learning about climate change. And then 45% of this 84 said that they have actually talked to their own kids about it. So this is something that we are hoping to develop more to help our future generation be equipped for the changes that are coming. So within our goals, so there's 2 parts to this. One, we want to develop a transdisciplinary climate change curriculum, integrating climate data and geospatial technologies, including some of the GLISA online tools that Rylie just shared about with us today. And then the data sets, encourage peer-to-peer learning, community-based research, and mentoring. And then we also want to design and build a system of educational support for youth through developing mentoring and experiential learning projects for high school students, school and community presentations, and materials and training for high school teachers. So a couple of things that this looks like. So previous GLISA projects have helped develop a climate change curriculum with lesson plans that discuss the impacts, vulnerability, adaptation, and just define it into a local context that aligns with school standards for teachers to be able to utilize. That is available on the website as well. Opportunities for high school students to pursue higher education. So we want to help bridge the students who are in high school, teaching them about these STEM fields and where they can make a difference, help transfer them to Muskegon Community College and then over to the university here, and making sure that at least 3 of those courses are directly transferable into GV so that they can get that started earlier on. And then providing teachers just with the support to help make this happen. They're the ones that are working directly with our youth. And so this looks like providing teaching materials, working with community partners to get them guest presentations, and even offering mini grants for them to be able to take the field trips or buy the classroom materials that they need.
So when we think about the role that educators play in climate, we really want to listen to our teachers and understand where they're coming from and what they have done and types of ways that we can help support them. So we sent out an educator survey, and the first response was taken at 6/5/2024 and the last one at 6/18/2024. And within that survey, we had 13 individuals in total who responded to that, including organizations of Boys and Girls Club of Muskegon Lakeshore, Mona Shores Public Schools, Muskegon Community College, and Muskegon Public Schools and Oak Ridge Public Schools. And our objective there, again, was to just gather information on time spent teaching about climate change and what educators need in order to teach it successfully. So some of the data that we had produced from that survey included how much time did they dedicate teaching about climate change and how confident they felt teaching about climate change or the following. And when we go back and we think about what Rebecca presented earlier with all those statistics, 3 and 4 science teachers do teach about climate change, but only spend 1 to 2 hours on it. And we can actually see that proven here with actually a higher percentage of 53.8 spending 0 hours on climate change, with a majority of the group only feeling somewhat or not confident at all teaching about climate change. So with that, again, we hosted a focus group August 12th of 2024, and we had 18 attendants, including Everose Consulting, Grand Rapids Catholic Central, GVSU AWRI, Interlochen Center for the Arts, Michigan Alliance for the Environment, Muskegon Community College, Muskegon Farmers Market, and Reese Puffer Schools, which is also in Muskegon. And our objective there was to gather information on the use of climate education and interest in collaboration. So our findings from this was a little bit interesting. So from the survey to our focus group, we found that every individual who filled out the questionnaire or the survey stated that they discussed climate change adaptation with students or family. Most of the professionals who attended and filled out the educator survey were passionate about climate. So we saw some of the individuals who filled out the survey also attended this webinar, and some of the ones who weren't so interested might have not shown up to this focus group, which we thought was pretty interesting. And we also asked the question of, how confident do they felt about teaching climate change? And 3 participants noted feeling fairly to somewhat confident, and 3 stated they felt confident, and 1 stated not at all. So we had a little bit different of crowd show up to this presentation than we kind of saw in the educator survey. We also asked the question of the types of support that they might need. So within that, they stated a list of resources would be helpful, field trips, collaboration, specific lesson plans, or lesson plans with materials. And there's us in the picture giving that focus group presentation. So moving forward, what are we doing with that information, and how do we view their insights and comments with the project? So a few things. We have connecting lesson plans to framework to guide and mentor educators with a future forward approach. And what that means is that we're not necessarily handing a set in stone structured, like here's what you have to teach necessarily, but we're providing them a guidance and framework so they can integrate it within their own comfort and what they're already doing and really make it into their own in order to move them forward within the education realm. So we're not trying to give them a set to necessarily stick them in one place, but the climate is always changing. So we want to build them up with the skills in order to teach it, not just now, but also in the future. And with that, also organizing partners for climate education field trips. So things like nature centers and solar farms. We can also workshop climate-based approaches and integrate climate curriculum into previous lesson plans. That fosters a sense of comfort. I really loved how Rebecca earlier in the summer stated that, when we think about teachers, we mostly think about STEM. However, teachers are not just, in STEM, and climate can also be integrated in things like literacy. So she used a great example of, in an English class, you can be reading about climate and still kind of fulfilling your needs as an English teacher while also integrating that kind of science piece of climate, which I thought was super insightful and helpful. And again, it can help foster that sense of comfort. So that is it. Rebecca, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we move along?
Yeah, I will say just where we've come from over the summer, we've spent a lot of time just meeting with community partners and doing this initial research to figure out what teachers would like. And next steps, Rylie, do you want to share about what's happening this Saturday? And you can be on the lookout more on our website. We'll post an events page soon, but with more upcoming things and community engagement opportunities.
Yes. So thank you, Rebecca, for reminding me. As much as we ask for educators to kind of be involved and be at our focus groups and fill out the survey, we also are kind of getting involved in the community as well. So Rebecca and I did attend the Weemiac River cleanup, where we helped table with one of our Weemiac representatives, Tanya, which was mentioned earlier. She also helped with the Muskegon slideshow on this slide. We also have chemistry at the mall coming up this Saturday, where you'll see me. I will be tabling there with a lovely infographic talking about the water cycle and climate change and how that impacts the water cycle. And then we also have Grand Rapids Public Museum, where we're helping with their river event in early of 2025. And yeah, so we also did Confluence. So we got to help with the Regional Math and Science Center for Grand Valley just this past month and table with them, which was super exciting and super awesome. But all right, Elena, I'm not sure if you wanted to do questions now or.
Absolutely. But first of all,
Okay.
thank you so much, Rebecca and Rylie. That was wonderful presentation. And so I just wanted to remind our audience that we have a few minutes for questions. And if you are joining us through the webinar, please send us your questions through Q&A. You wouldn't be able to use your voice. So please use Q&A and type those questions, and then I will read them for Rebecca and Rylie. If you are here with me on the screen, so Kaytlin, if you do have any questions, do not use Q&A. You can just ask your questions and jump in. And I want to just kind of open up with one big question for you, of course, how everybody can join you, but also you have an amazing model in this project, right? Because you are working with, you are at Grand Valley, you're undergraduate students, you are working with the University of Michigan, which is one of their major research universities in the world doing really cutting edge frontline research on climate change. But you're also working with high schoolers, and you're also working with community colleges. So it's a very interesting range of institutions, right? So we have high school students, we have community college students, we have students from other universities, you know, focusing mostly on undergraduate students. And then you have this big research one university. So how do you manage to kind of navigate this chain connecting very different types of universities and other educational institutions? And what is really the benefit of doing this? You know, like, could you talk a little bit about the model of GLISA? And I also wanted to remind, you know, that you mentioned our website, the website of your project, the GLISA-ELF. So those of you in the audience who are not familiar with GLISA, with the Great Lakes Integrated Assessment at the University of Michigan, you know our website, right? You know, www.gvsu.edu/CCS. This is the same website that you were using to sign up for the conference. And if you go to the next tab, GLISA-ELF, this is where you would find information about Rebecca's and Rylie's project as well. But back to the question, how do you manage navigating the systems? How you connect with the University of Michigan, and how do you connect with community colleges?
Yeah, I can start, and then Rylie, if you want to, feel free to hop in. Personally, I've fallen back on some previous experience that I've had working at GRCC. I started off as a non-traditional student, so I went to college, took a break, and then kind of came back. And I think that helped give me some perspective and just kind of navigating the world a little bit and fostering connections. I really learned our goal is a community approach. You know, we're not trying to come in and say, this is how you need to run the project. We're coming in and saying, what is the needs of this specific community that may vary between communities, and how can we support you? And who do we know that has the resources to do that? So obviously the University of Michigan has been very gracious, not only with funding, but, you know, providing training for us and then the resources that we need to do that. And so my goal is just to be like a connecting bridge between things. My role as a student resources coordinator at Grand Rapids Community College has really helped me kind of learn some of the bridging that needs to be done between a high school level versus what it looks like when you're in college. And even a community college is going to be different than a larger university. So really understanding that community, that demographic that you're working with is key, because each of those approaches and how you're going to relate and connect with those people is going to be different. So kind of finding that common ground and saying, you know, we're not doing this alone. We're just the two presenting on the project. There's a big whole team behind us that is supporting us, which has been phenomenal. And I would say that's, you know, that has been the biggest thing for me personally navigating it, is just fostering those connections so that we know who to rely on, who can rely on us too, and making sure that that relationship goes both ways. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca. That was a fabulous answer. And to kind of piggyback off that, I think it's very important to recognize that we're all still learning. The second that we stop deciding to ask each other questions or, you know, engage in conversations around climate is really the second that we all kind of stay in one place. And really, that's not what we need right now. We need to drive each other forward. And so within working in, you know, with U of M and with Grand Valley and with MCC, the collaboration piece of also just kind of listening to each other. For example, Rebecca and I have both kind of sent our presentations through the line of individuals coming from each of those organizations or institutions and asked them, hey, what do you think about this? And also we have gotten numerous trainings, including CHAMPS and the other tools, including Pivot, which wasn't presented on today, to kind of gauge on how we can best utilize their tools and best educate others on those tools as well. So we are constantly learning from each other and one another to help push our entire project as well as ourselves forward. And, you know, with the educator survey and with the focus groups, we again kind of engaged in that learning from one another by asking the educators, you know, what do they think about this, right? They're for the professionals within their realm. And of course, we want to help offer our support to them. And so, of course, we need to learn where they're at, what they need in order to actually listen to them.
Thank you very much. And I know that was the big question. And I know that you are working with many resources, many very complex online tools and databases. You're using Pivot, you're using CHUMPS, you're using Great Lakes climatology, and helping kind of to adapt them to the lesson plans that are suitable for the use at the high school level. And I think with both of you, with having so much experience with substitute teaching and with working with other students as mentors, what is your main, like, what do you see any challenges in adapting this, very sophisticated tools, making them really kind of everyday tool that every high schooler, like every citizen in the community could use and understand?
Yeah, here's where I'm going to fall back on how the idea that we're not doing this alone. When we've gone through and done the training, our point of contact at the University of Michigan, Rachel, she has been great about answering all of our questions, even in this context where we've asked questions to say, and given us the freedom to even say, like Rylie mentioned, that we're not going to be using one of the tools, Pivot, because we don't feel that it quite aligns with the audience that we're intending to help develop support for with our teachers and how they could integrate this into their classroom. But it's still absolutely something we could reconsider if we did find a classroom that said, hey, we do want to use this. And they have also brought back feedback from us to their team to be able to say, hey, this is specifically what they're looking for with this. What resources do we already have that we can provide them as a beginning framework? So that has been very helpful for me, knowing that, once again, we do have those other community partners who want to work with us and who are helping support us in this. And I think that is going to be one of the key things for helping develop how to utilize these tools within a classroom.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what Rebecca was saying, a large thing with climate education is trying to get people to actually care about it. And that's why educators play such a crucial role in pushing the climate solutions forward, because they're the ones that can really help us, educate the youth. And then the youth, of course, can educate, their daughters and the next generations to come, which really pushes us forward. And so with Rebecca kind of talking about those tools, so like with us sharing those tools with the educators, it's very easy to navigate those tools. It maybe took me 30 seconds to pull those photos and click on the stations, which makes it very nice that U of M kind of laid it out so easily to navigate. It doesn't need any specific like large instructional guide in order to kind of see it and click, which I love, and which makes it so easy and so applicable to not only us as researchers and as representatives from the GLISA team, but also within the educational realm for people who might not be as, inclined to seek out that information.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thanks for your presentation. If we have more questions from the audience, we'll have a little bit of time at the end after all the three presentations at the end of the sessions. All the three groups of panelists will be with us. Right now, I would like to keep us on the schedule. So we're going to continue with our guest from Scotland, with Tina Marshall, who is already here on the screen as well. And Tina is joining us from Heriot University at Orkney in Scotland, in UK. And she is also, I think, a very amazing person from what I've learned just by reading your biography, Tina. You have also done so much. So Tina Marshall is a graduate of London South Bank University with a degree in IT and in Spanish, and a postgraduate diploma in environmental economics, policy and risk. She lives in Leith, in Scottish county of Caithness, and she spent 15 years operating a bed and breakfast and a tea room at Dunnet Head while researching the science from there. She's a traveler, she's an environmentalist. She has done many really amazing things. And she is also the founder of the North Highland Weight Project. She launched it in 2024 after Visit Scotland recognized this project. And she completed it without any public funds. She operates the route with commercial sponsorships. She's constantly looking for contacts for collaboration, for public services. She's volunteering. She's engaged in so many interesting projects in her community. Tina also has recently launched Fitbit for Scotland, which is designed to measure the ground and the impact of outdoor activities on pathways. The development is not yet complete, but she is operating manual, and she is writing about her experience, and she is publishing in the quarterly magazine Environmental News and Elements of the Environment Soil. So we're absolutely honored to have Tina Marshall with us, and let's give her a very warm welcome. Welcome, Tina, and the screen is yours.
Well, thank you for that. I didn't deserve all of that, Elena, but I am honoured to be here and listening to these two wonderful young people talking about that. I'm going to introduce that to the Scottish Government. They'll love it. So if you don't mind, we'll talk about that maybe later. But yeah, I lived at Dunnet Head, which is 58 degrees north, further north than Moscow. It's not as cold up here as you'd think it was. It's changed over the last 25 years, but it's still not as cold as you would imagine. It does get very windy. 120-mile-an-hour winds are not unusual. We don't get as much snow as you think either, which is quite, except in the central part of Caithness. But it's a fantastic place to live. The climate is definitely changing. Adaptation Scotland are working hard to look at this, but in some ways it's quite fragmented, which I've also been looking at. But going to what I'm actually doing up here now, just to put you quickly in the picture, we just launched the Caithness and Sutherland Walking Festival. You didn't know that, Elena. We only did it the other day. I decided I was going to do that because now we're going to be on the international trails with Spain.
This is
I've
amazing.
got a meeting with them tomorrow. You didn't know that. I didn't tell you. We only did it yesterday.
And would you like to share your screen, Tina?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's gone. No, it's not coming. It's stopped. Can you see? Talking about what so we're talking about what are the specific difficulties in meeting climate change targets in the far north of Scotland. Well, the North Highland Way, as we said, is destined to be the only walking, cycling and horse riding route across the north of Scotland. From John O'Groats to Durness and up to 10 miles inland. It's also the only one which adheres to the Scottish Outdoor Access Code, which is particular to Scotland. We don't have it. They don't have it in England or Wales, and they're very jealous. And the Land Reform Scotland 2016. The scientific elements are still under investigation. But in 2024, the Pentland Firth became our focus. That is the area between the west of Scotland and it goes past Orkney and out to John O'Groats. So it's quite narrow and very rough at certain times of year. But it's a fantastic area. There's a film coming out soon, which I'll give you when I get it. So it's modelled on the Marine Heritage Specification, which was used by the Northwest Geopark. The geographical location and lack of social cohesion are just two of the reasons why the North Highland Way will not meet their targets. The cultural differences between Caithness and Sutherland is distinct, with the area east of the area being supported by funding from the decommissioning of the nuclear plant at Dounreay for over 20 years. The area has not been encouraged to be self-sustaining. This only includes a travel to work area between 50 miles of Dounreay in the northeast of Caithness. So this is a big problem because everybody depends on public money, which is not sustainable in the long term. In 2022, the Northwest Highlands Geopark Limited embarked on an ambitious project to interpret the marine heritage of the geopark. This was designed to be both cultural and natural. They gathered stories, histories, and information to develop a website, trail guide, learning packs, training program, and other supporting administrative and physical infrastructure. This includes Durness, but not Kinloch Burvey, but also includes Tongue. It doesn't include us on the east side. This aims to alleviate some of the problems to the west, but excludes anyone from out with the park area. Thus, there is lack of holistic thinking. They are doing very well over there, but over in the east side, we don't get anything, especially now Dune Ray is, well, allegedly closing down. I don't think it ever will, but there we go. So the project was to research the marine heritage aspects of one of the following as desk-based or primary research. My own submission was more inclusive, based around the concept of the route of the Spanish Armada, hence the links with Spain, and being part Spanish as well. So they had oral histories, some at Kinloch Burvey, archival history in the Spanish Armada, folklore legends, Spanish Armada, legends of treasure, archaeology from the Canmore database, ecology and peatlands, geology, Tongue, North Highland Way, and the Rock Route. In 2014, we started developing the North Highland Way. Access landowners, businesses, and communities all had an input. So it was great listening to what Rebecca was saying, as well as public services. It continues to be a massive task with an uncooperative enterprise agency who thinks everything should be free, to new bridges which are not taken into consideration, except for the ever-increasing traffic on the NC 500, which is not been consulted about. So on the slide there, we have sites of special scientific interest where we are. There's a video there of Dunnet Head. We call that Caithness in miniature. We're 120 miles north of Inverness, which is 2.5 hour drive, or 4 hours on the train, or 3.5 hours on the bus. It's a very poor transport system, and it's getting worse because we just lost our bus service. There's no integrated plan for infrastructure which underpins climate change. We're very rural, and it's very difficult to keep it together because everything should be done on a community basis and a voluntary basis. That's what they think. So basically, there's lots of cultural differences. An influx of incomers who don't understand the country ways could sometimes be a problem, especially around the area of the Sutherland Space Hub, where the Melners crofters are getting a bit upset because incomers are coming in and trying to tell them what to do, which doesn't really go down very well sometimes. Crofters generally have totally different views to incomers, so sometimes there's quite a lack of cooperation, shall we say, between them. So with public services, some public services not being very helpful, and this, we have a lot of many difficult problems. But basically, the Highland Council area is too big. It's a third of Scotland. It's huge. And Inverness, all that far away, calls the agenda, and they get all the money. There is no concerted action from the Scottish government, and a lot of political division. I don't know if you hear that much in the States, but there's a lot of political division, especially at the moment. We need more integrated working between public services, more collaboration between interested parties, a review of the planning legislation. We need to develop a strategic plan, which we used to have them, but we don't have them anymore. And we need to review the methodology of the scorecards, which is a great system. And it's good. There are gaps, but there are with anything. And being an economist and somebody who likes to look at things from a different perspective, it's quite interesting. So the scorecards, the Council's climate action scorecards is a methodology for measuring climate change through the councils. In England, there's only one system. In Scotland, there are two. There are the councils and there are climate action networks, and the two don't speak to each other. So it's very difficult to get a measurement. Scotland's got the climate action networks led by the communities, which means voluntary. Capacity of volunteers has reduced over the years as people need to work with the cost of living crisis, and especially with rising electricity prices. There is no connection between the councils and the fund under the Adaptation Scotland scheme. Lack of communication is a threat to net zero, as identified at the outset of my research in 2022. Some councils have not complied to the scorecard system and have not answered the questions. So that was also a big problem. So they're going to have to review that again next year. So that's the scorecards. It's quite a good system, actually, if the councils would always cooperate, but they don't always cooperate. So when it comes back to climate change specifically, we're looking at the shoreline management planning, which is driven by the necessity for future shoreline management. By rising sea levels, especially on Orkney. Orkney has terrible problems with rising sea levels and other climate change effects, as it is on the beautiful Orkneys. Rising sea temperatures is a global problem as well, with types of cetaceans visiting Scotland's shores. Coastal erosion is a problem in all areas, especially around the Golspie area, which is on the east coast. And the north coast has other specific problems because of all the geos, inlets, that is. There's no focus on coastal erosion on the north coast, but there is around Fife area, which is further south. They wrote a project to predicting the potential future erosion of Scotland's coastlines under different climate change scenarios. And in 2021, an excellent webinar, Planning for Great Places, Planning for Coast, was produced by Nature Scot. It develops the basis of how a dynamic coast project further south in Fife was developed in its ongoing impact. The impact on the north coast shores is destined to be phenomenal, as wildlife and sea life, even the life of seabirds, find respite in the cooler Scottish waters, as the Spanish waters and the further south get too hot, even in England. This is combined with the encouragement of outdoor activities, which provides a dilemma for the cash-strapped local councils, all of them, not just a Highland Council. So should funding be directed towards protection of the coast or social problems and getting people out and about for their health and mental well-being? This conundrum has been researched by environmentalists for many years. It is now only just beginning to be really understood. Is it the communities who matter most or our planet? The answer is both, but how do we balance it? More often these days, we see beach cleaning activities by the local communities, the plastic and historical pieces washed up on the beach, such as lumps of latex done at beach from the old days when rubber was transported from the Far East. Plastic is a real problem in this throwaway age. The consciences of people are being pricked, and there is evidence of attitude changes. This is just a matter of ongoing education and communication. And that's another reason why I wanted to look at marine research next year. But also I want to get the children involved more. And especially I'm trying to do that now through the CCESS Walking Festival for the first time, which will be really good, I think. So that'll be the first time the children have been involved. And disabled people as well. We need them involved because they never have been before. So we're looking at more of a holistic method, and sometimes I'm not from here, and sometimes I'm, oh, she thinks she talks too much, which I probably do. So I don't know. I mean, that's my presentation. It's a bit short, I think. Is it, Elena, or is it okay?
It was perfect. Thank you so much. And big round of applause to Tina. My apologies for technical problems that we are experiencing today, but thank you so much for pulling together this presentation. Great work even without visuals. So if ever you want to share your slides in future, we can always share it with the video later. So perfect time, and we have just about 5 minutes for questions for Tina Marshall. And once again, if you have any questions from the audience, please do send them through Q&A. And if any of the panelists have questions here, you can just unmute yourself and ask those questions. So it's in a great research. You are working on, this amazing community-based projects. Could you share a little bit more? Like, what are the main challenges that you are experiencing, and what are your thoughts on what are the best ways to overcome them?
Well, I think that now, as I said, I need to get the schools more involved. In fact, this morning, the Highland Council area split off all the leisure services and educational services from the Highland Council under a company organisation called Highland High Life, which is a charity. And it's really good what they did, because otherwise we'd have lost the whole council at all. We wouldn't have a council at all. We wouldn't have any say at all in the north. So I think it's now to try and get the children involved through the schools, and starting with that with the Caithness and Sutherland Walking Festival. That was one thing that we need to do. And also we need to, the public services have to be a bit more accountable for what they do, which I keep trying to do. And I'm not a politician, and I don't really mind which political group does it, as long as it gets done. And they know that. So some of them won't talk to me at all, because they know that I talk to all the others. But I am known for getting things done. There's no doubt about that. I'm actually known for getting things done. If I can just show in one little example, which was quite amusing. I was at an event in Betty Hill, which is between here and Durness, about halfway down. And the lady came up. She said, "Oh, you're Tina?" I said, "Yes." She said, my brother has a problem." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." I said, "Who's that?" She said, "It's Malcolm. He's the ferry master to take people across to Cape Wrath." So I said, "Oh, what can I do?" She said, "Well, the council won't fix the road." So I said, "What do you mean they won't fix the road?" So it's full of potholes. So I rang Malcolm. I said, he told me what the council were doing, which was unbelievable, really. So I said, "Oh, well, don't worry, Malcolm. I'll find out how much this road is going to cost." So I did. And then I rang Malcolm and told him how much it cost. And the boys down there did it themselves. And they had all the machinery and everything. So a week later, after 4 or 5 months of not being able to get the road in, now they've got a road. That was just one example of how bossy I am. So it was great. So he was able to operate his ferry and the bus. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to at all. But of course, the council knew who told him.
This is a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing it, Tina. Your presentation makes me think about the keynote that we heard yesterday in Muskegon by the local climate activist, Tanya Kabala, who taught us yesterday that persistence is really everything, right? We need to develop collaboration, but we also need to be very, very persistent. And as we become more persistent, we also I think we are finding joy, but we are also building our own resilience. So that was the lesson that I learned yesterday as well. And I'm relearning this lesson from you as well. Thank you.
Well, can I just say, we've got this fantastic thing up here called Freedom of Information Act. It's a very powerful act. And at first, I'm a journalist as well. I was a journalist when I was younger. So I use this act all the time. And if they don't answer me, I ask them under Freedom of Information. So they've only got 20 days to answer them. And now they get some of them are getting a Freedom of Information Act request every week, and they're fed up with me, so they just keep doing it until they do as they're told.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Tina. We might have just, if there is any burning question from the audience, you might want to send it right now through Q&A. Otherwise, we will have more time after all the 3 presentations at the end of this webinar, where we can again engage with all 3 groups for these great presentations. If you don't have any immediate questions, we're going to move forward right now. Thank you, Tina. Please stay with us because we will have time for the discussion. Right now, we're going to move forward to our final presentation by Carron and Poynter, and I see that Kate has just Poynter just was able to join us from Denver as well. So welcome, Kate. I know that you have been working on this project separately and together for 2 years, and it has been also a great pleasure for me to work with you and several other students engaged in this project. So, formal introductions. Carron, welcome. You have just graduated from Grand Valley in April 2024, and you hold a dual degree in nursing and environmental and sustainability studies. Kate was a member of the Frederick Marr Honors College as well, just as Rylie, and she was a Russell Mobby Student Fellow in Philanthropic Studies, working with me and the Johnson Center for Philanthropy in 2023-2024. Kate was also a research assistant exploring the relationships between happiness and environmental sustainability. And we still continue working on this project and working a paper together right now. At GVSU, Kate was the co-chair for the Community Health Committee for the National Student Nurses Association, where she helped planning activities to promote health and wellness for the community. And Kate is very passionate about the intersection between human health and the environment. So welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us for the entire webinar today. I also have a pleasure to introduce your co-author, Kate Poynter. And Kate, welcome to you. It was also a great pleasure working with you and supervising your research a couple of years ago. Kaytlin is now a master's student at the University of Colorado in Denver, and she is pursuing a dual degree in urban and regional planning and urban design. And she graduated a year earlier from Grand Valley with her bachelor's degree in geography and minor in environmental studies. Kate began her education in Michigan at Grand Valley, and so she graduated a year ago before joining University of Denver. And as far as I remember, you was also at some point the president of Geography Club. So we have two presidents of Geography Club on the screen today. And of course, you was succeeded by Rebecca Lubbers, who had her presentation earlier together with Rylie Dietz. So, we're very proud of you. You are one of our alums. You obviously, it looks like your interest in climate change and your interest in the environment also started at GVSU. And I know that you are very passionate about intersectionality of the built environment, equitable systems, and sustainability. So welcome, Kaytlin and Kate, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks for those introductions. I will share my screen now so you guys can see the slides. All right. Are you able to see these?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Kate, if you want to start it off.
Yeah, so this right here, this is our little presentation regarding our 2-year research process about equity and inclusion and climate action plans and adaptation plans in Michigan cities. So a little background for our project. This current study extends the previous year's research to examine the integration of equity and inclusion in Michigan cities' climate strategies. And there's an aim to enhance future climate plans with diverse knowledge and equitable inclusive action. So our foundational work created a key framework to assess diverse stakeholders' involvement, including Indigenous and vulnerable groups in climate planning. And through analyzing city plans and stakeholder interviews, we seek to inform the evolution of well-rounded climate adaptation strategies for potential applications. So more or less what we're doing, we're analyzing climate action plans and adaptation plans in Michigan, and we're also integrating the knowledge of Indigenous peoples in our climate action plans and adaptation planning. So what this means for the analyzing of the plans, we're gonna see what different actions and diversity inclusion efforts are within those. And as for integrating Indigenous knowledge, we're gonna include the tribal partners through interviews, through kind of getting more knowledge about how they go about climate adaptation and sustainable knowledge. And we are going to be acknowledging their Indigenous knowledge throughout our paper and our research. So the main research questions that we have, how does the consideration of equity and justice in climate action and climate adaptation goals of existing and development plans, how is this related to diversity and inclusion of our stakeholders? And then we also want to see how the 2I approach reflected in the tribal climate adaptation menu from 2020 could potentially inform and improve the existing future of climate adaptation planning tools, which currently is used to address unique techniques or unique needs, values, and cultures of Indigenous communities. So the objectives that we have, sorry, my screen's messing up. So our objectives, we hope to analyze a framework that prepares better consideration for equity and climate adaptation and action plans. We hope to evaluate and compare diversity in a various group of stakeholders engaged in developing and implementing these action plans. We hope to also learn what opportunities and challenges, including but not limited to the funding of support, impacts diversity, equity, and inclusion in our climate action and adaptation planning, and how the 2I approach could potentially help to improve climate adaptation planning. So we have two different diagrams. On the left, we're going to have a map of Michigan with a bunch of pinpoints of the different cities that we're analyzing. In total, there's going to be 7. And on the right, we have a chart that breaks down the cities along with the titles of these action and adaptation plans, along with if they're mitigation with elements of adaptation or just mitigation or just adaptation. And we also have the year, so you can kind of see like how newer ones might have more of a structured plan compared to older ones and kind of analyze it from there. So the system that we set up for analyzing this, we have 9 different city plans with 7 different cities, and we have a 2 grading system. We have equity-centered actions, and we also have diversity and inclusion, and within this system, it's going to be 5 tiers. So right here we have our sectors and stakeholders. We have 14 different sectors and 12 different stakeholders. So these right here, we set up a system at the beginning to kind of dissect what equity would contain and what diversity and inclusion would contain. And we try to keep it more or less equal so we could have a very level-fielded grading system for these adaptation plans. And we more or less hit like the main things that you would want to look for when you're looking for stuff in a plan, such as like housing security, air quality, access to clean water, and also just like state agencies, colleges and universities, social justice advocacy groups. So really just kind of diving into the different sectors of things that would really show what a plan has that's really pushing for more climate security and more adaptation. So right here's our grading system, a little bit more broken down. Again, it's like a 5-tier system. So we have it from 0 to 4. 0 on both the scales means that there was nothing present. And it goes all the way to 4. For equity and inclusion, that's like the best thing that we could want. It would mean that the planning domain is present and strategies for achieving equity are explained and the evaluation plan is provided. So it's very clear, it's on their plan, they're going for it. And then as for the diversity and inclusion, number 4 would mean there's author and co-authors listed on the cover page that these stakeholders were a big contributor to the action plan. And right here, we have an assessment of comparisons, kind of showcasing which cities more or less were have more of these words pop up, more or less more 4s rather than 0s throughout the plan. As you can see across the board, Ann Arbor on the equity-centered actions is the highest, along with Ann Arbor, and East Lansing, Royal Oak. And if I remember that correctly, those are a lot more of like the newer plans. And I definitely believe that that's pretty helpful in like seeing how the knowledge has progressed over time. There's a lot more notice in equity-centered actions. And then as we look at diversity and inclusion in city plans, we have Detroit and Ann Arbor more or less are really big spikes for this. And comparing these to like future graphs throughout the presentation, it gives a lot of information as to why these have a larger spike than any of the other cities.
And then using the data based on the grading system, we created graphs for each city to show where each city is succeeding. So this is Detroit's climate action plan, Traverse City's climate action plan, as well as their adaptation plan, Marquette, East Lansing sustainability plan, Royal Oak, and Ann Arbor. So Ann Arbor received by far the highest score. It has the most number of included sectors addressed, along with the most consideration of equity in each individual sector. And areas of particular growth for Ann Arbor's plan include housing, energy decarbonization, waste management, multimodal transportation, as well as health and wellness. So as Kate kind of touched on a little bit before, as you can see, the more recent the plan, the more likely it is to include diversity and equity, which shows notable improvement. This evolution indicates a growing recognition of the importance of these factors in effective climate planning. And once again, Ann Arbor has the most information involving diversity and equity. So for funding sources, last year there were Qualtrics surveys sent out to assess the different types of funding received. And the results showed a mix of federal grants, state funding, and private philanthropy playing roles. However, there was low participation in these surveys. So this is why the past year we reached out to professionals to supplement with a total of 5 interviews. So this is a table showing or summarizing the information from our 5 interviewees. So we did this to obtain more information about the planning process and to clarify questions remaining after our own evaluation of the plans. The 5 participants were a mix of sustainability officers, climate adaptation planners, as well as leaders of state and local environmental justice and climate action groups. These participants were all familiar with the plans of Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor's, which were unpublished at the time of the interviews. Both of these plans included equity in many of their plans since they were newer. And both plans had collaboration across multiple sectors. For example, there was a focus on connecting housing to mobility and development of warming/cooling centers. Additionally, they both made efforts to include diverse voices, and some funding sources included public and private foundations, grants, as well as philanthropic foundations. And lastly, some goals included sustainability, decarbonization, and energy efficiency. So this is the Tribal Adaptation Menu. It was published by the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission in 2019. It was developed by a diverse group of collaborators representing tribal, academic, intertribal, and government entities in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. It provides a powerful framework to integrate Indigenous knowledge, culture, language, and history, along with scientific data, into the climate adaptation planning process. This document is intended to empower not only tribal governments, but also federal and state agencies, as well as other organizations in the Great Lakes region to incorporate the Anishinaabe perspectives into a climate adaptation framework. This specific piece was designed to represent Ojibwe clans and their role in caring about the earth. The turtle is the center, is the representation of Turtle Island, our lands, waters, and home. The red lines connect the hearts and minds of the being on earth through their feet and into the ground. These bloodlines show how we are made up of everything the earth has to provide, how we draw our existence from this place, and also how our thoughts, intentions, and actions impact the place we call home. There are 4 basic colors. the dark blue of the waters, the light blue of the skies, the green of plants, and the red of our blood and earth. This table shows the two-eyed approach. The two-eyed approach merges Indigenous and Western knowledge systems to create a comprehensive and culturally sensitive solutions. As you can see, many of the plans, the city plans, did not include this knowledge or collaborative practices, which is a missed opportunity for gaining deeper insights and fostering partnerships. We believe the two-eyed approach should be taken for future plans since they are both doing similar things without realizing it. There were limitations to our research. The first is that there was a small sample size of only 7 climate adaptation plans. There was a broad chronological range from 2011 to 2024. There was also a low response to our Qualtrics survey, and there were only 5 interviews. Some of the ratings of considerations of equity and diversity are based on our own interpretation of plans and other documents. And lastly, the nature of climate action and adaptation planning is constantly evolving. So some key points are that there is a need to raise awareness for inclusive climate strategies that reflect diverse and underrepresented perspectives to ensure equitable community representation. The future of climate action plans should be fostered by the collaboration among various stakeholders and merging Indigenous knowledge with scientific research to develop more impactful and encompassing strategies for climate change. The reviewed plans highlight the ongoing need to integrate these diverse perspectives. And the last key point is that climate action and adaptation planning hinges on integrating equity at all stages, fostering cross-sector collaboration, and actively involving diverse community stakeholders. These are our references we used. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate and Kaytlin. This was a great presentation. And I was also, when I saw the first part of the presentation and the second part of the presentation, it really reminded me about all the 2 years of our groundwork. And I would like also acknowledge other contributors to the study. So we have 2 more co-authors, Hannah Zellman, who was a partner of Kate Poynter, and they were working together for 1 year, essentially on their baseline assessment of all the salmon climate adaptation plans. They also studied their Chicago climate adaptation plan that in many ways was an inspiration for us, and we were using it as a benchmark comparing climate action and climate adaptation plans of Michigan cities. And then I was thinking about the second half of the project when you were working, Kate, with Bushra Rush, and you really took this project to the next level as we moved from our own assessment of all the metrics that we used reflecting on both equity and diversity of the stakeholders. And then we really wanted to understand this data through surveys and interviews, primarily through the interviews, and you were leading this part of the research. So it was really great to see this continuity between 2 cohorts of you. And of course, Kate, I remember your presentation. So you shared the preliminary version of this project as a poster at the annual meeting of the Association of American Geographers. And then your partner, Hannah Zellman, and hopefully she's in the audience today, shared it as a presentation at the annual meeting of the Association of Environmental Studies and Science. And then this year, Kate and Bushra, you were working further on this project, and it's all culminated with a publication. So I saw the question from the audience asking if you could share the slides. And sure, you're welcome to share the slides, but I was wondering for the sake of our audience, you probably would be more interested to see the final version of this paper, the way how it came together. And so this research is actually published in sustainability in the special issue on climate adaptation, sustainability, well-being, and ethics. And so I am going to share the link. We are also recording this presentation, so this presentation is also you would see it recorded already tomorrow on our website. So any more questions from the audience besides how it's going to be shared? And I am going to drop right now the link to the publication as well. Any other questions? And again, if we have any questions from the panelists who are here on the screen, just you're very welcome to unmute yourself with the questions. And if there are more questions from the audience besides how to, where to find more about this research, please let us know.
I can ask a question. So either of you, how has your work impacted, like with this project, your work that you're doing now, or things that you're interested or doing besides this project? Like, how has this influenced, what you're doing and the work that you're doing now?
I can go first. It's definitely like influenced me to like pursue a higher education through getting a master's degree. And kind of especially like within like city planning, it's interesting to see how, especially like living in a different city, how different it is, more or less how they go about it, different states and all that stuff. And this research especially has really helped me like open my eyes to more of like the micro scaled elements within planning in regards to like equity and inclusion and our diversity, especially like with like the different wants and needs from a city. And like I kind of just like to look through like city plans for fun as I like moved around my whole life and seeing it all. And I feel like especially like looking at, for example, comparing like Detroit's and Ann Arbor's like different city plans and how Detroit had a giant spike in diversity efforts because that's something like they are striving for because that's like needs of their community, and comparing it to like places out here has been definitely really interesting. And it's just really, I guess, sparked my interest in a lot of different things within planning and geography, and kind of just keeps me curious and keeps me excited to just keep educating myself and learning more.
I agree with Kate. It has definitely inspired me to continue to pursue climate change in the future with a career and both, hopefully, a master's program one day. And one of the things that really interested me with my nursing and with my background in nursing is just how much like climate change can impact all aspects of like humans and their health, and just really taking a look at the whole picture and seeing that it impacts the environment, which then really can negatively impact human health. And it's all just so interconnected. And it was really fascinating to see that through both like the surveys and also through the interviews I conducted, and hearing about how it impacts like the health and wellness of the community.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just curious because you both graduated, so you're kind of off to other things and within the workforce. So I appreciate that. I'm always curious to kind of understand like the role in which, year-long projects extensively kind of play a role into what you're doing now.
And thank you again. I have a very similar question as Rylie. So what's next for you? Where are you hoping to take this? Are you going to continue your research along the same lines? I know, Kate, you are in graduate school, and Carron, you are thinking to go to graduate school probably in future. So any thoughts about where you would like, to bring this research perhaps in your future research agendas?
Yeah, well, as of right now, I am just at the beginning process of starting to look for jobs. But one of the things I really want to make sure that is incorporated in my career is the impact of like human health on the environment and really promoting a healthy environment to help promote the health of people as well, and really opening people's eyes to see that it's not like just one or the other, and that they are so interconnected and they impact each other.
Thank you. And any other questions, perhaps not only to Kate and Kate, but also Rylie, Rebecca, Tina. We have a little bit of time for the discussion if you have any questions to any of our wonderful panelists. Wow. And I want again to remind that if you have any questions and have no time to send them now, this session is recorded. It's going to be posted on the CCESS website already tomorrow. So you can rewatch it and let us know if you have any questions. And all the panelists, can I share your contact information with our audience if anybody has a question directly to you or wants to learn more about your project or want to talk more? May I share your contact information? Yes.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the fabulous session. I want to remind those of you who are staying with us for the next webinar that if you are staying at 11 o'clock for the presentation by Peter Victor, this is going to be a different link, and that webinar link is also posted in the program, and it was also sent this morning to all registered participants. If you cannot find this link, just go again to www.gvsu.edu CCS, navigate to the program of this year's summit, and you would immediately see it. You would also see the link where you can purchase the book of Peter Victor that he is going to discuss with us today. So, hopefully you have time to read it and prepare within the next hour. Thank you, ladies. Thank you all. Thank you for this great presentation. Thank you, Tina, for joining us from the other side of the pond. It was absolutely such a pleasure meeting you today in person. So let's stay connected. I hope to see you all for the CCESS 2025, which is going to be in October, again in October 2025. And I look forward to learning more about your research in a year and where you will take it from here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.